Hello, viewer. Welcome to today's episode of Women's View. I'm your host, Anne Moremi, and it's such a great pleasure to be having you with us once more. So, I've just been talking to my guest who will introduce herself shortly, and I'm telling her that I really miss going to the studio. But, it is what it is. So, we're zooming into you from different locations. So, anyway, sit back and enjoy yourself. Today is a very good day, and we're going to be discussing something that is very relevant. And before I tell you the topic, I want you to know that you can be able to access us on our social media channels, that is GBS TV Africa, both on YouTube and on Facebook, GBS TV Africa. In case you want to send us an SMS, the number to use is 21144. So we really like to hear from you. So please send in your questions, your comments, and we'll be able to get back to you as the show continues. So in studio today, we are going to be discussing something that is very relevant. We're going to be talking about anger management. So anger is something that you cannot see, it's like the wind, but it is something whose effects you can feel. You can tell when somebody is angry by looking at their face. You can tell when they're irritated. And sometimes it's not a big deal, but sometimes the anger can continue to grow, and it expresses itself in different ways. And we see it in our society. When we think about road rage, for example, there's a lot of road rage all over the world, not just in Kenya. There's also a lot of physical abuse, and that stems from anger. So when we see the things that are happening in our society, one thing is clear, that we're not being able to manage our anger very well. We're not being able to understand it. So that's why we're here, to bring you relevant new information. And in studio is a really is an expert on the same, and I want to give her this opportunity to introduce herself. Welcome.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for inviting me to the show. And it's so good to meet your viewers. My name is Charlene Waiganjo, and I've been living in Kenya since 2001. I'm a life coach with Albane Institute, and we focus on stress and trauma management and processing. So this topic of anger is really extremely relevant, especially now when we are living in the COVID era, if I can call it like that. But interesting, Anne, I was not always in this field of work. When I first came to Kenya, I was in the ICT field, in corporate IT and telecommunications, and I worked in different African countries. But in 2013, I was caught up in the Westgate terror attack, and that had a profound impact on my life. And it really destabilized me, and I became disorganized, and I could not get control back over my life. I became literally a hermit. And so I had to learn how to process that whole experience and to relearn how to integrate myself into society and to get back to work. So in my own path and journey of healing, it had such a profound effect on me that I decided to dedicate my life to helping others, because it is something simple like anger can really disrupt us. It becomes a nuisance in our life if we don't understand it. And so this is what I do. I share my experiences with others and hopefully help them to get on the right path of healing. It's not about coping so much, but more about healing. So many of us can cope. We can all cope and find ways and means to cope, but to really heal is to process something and to get rid of it permanently, get rid of that baggage that you carry with yourself.
Wow. Already I'm so impressed, and congratulations. I didn't know those are the circumstances that led to you becoming a life coach, but I'm so happy that you have shared such a personal experience because what I've come to realize is that people appreciate it so much more when the person is talking and they're talking from a personal experience. And so the fact that you have actually gone through a traumatic experience and then you now are able to help people go through traumatic experiences, that is a very, very different ballgame from just dealing with somebody who is talking about it from a theoretical aspect. So first of all, congratulations on your journey. I know Westgate was traumatizing, and I can imagine that it changed your life, it changed your career, and unfortunately, because of an unfortunate incident, we are fortunate to have you. So it's the silver lining.
Yes, and the thing is, all of our negative experiences in life, if we change how we think about them, they can become the best experiences in our life. Because in struggling to deal with those experiences, we will actually find our purpose. And how many people go through life? We go through life just doing a job for the sake of the paycheck, but it is maybe not really our passion. It is not really what drives us. It is not really what speaks to our purpose. And
Exactly.
so
And therefore, it's not
yes,
fulfilling as well.
exactly, Anne. So sometimes when we look at our negative experiences, it helps to try and look at it differently, get a different perspective on the situation.
Okay.
Because we
That's where
cannot
we're
go
here.
back. Yeah, we can, we cannot go back to that experience. I cannot go back to Westgate and calculate my times and ensure that I am not there. So we can never change that experience, but what we can change is we can control the effect it has on ourselves today. And it is the same with anger, Anne.
Okay. Let's actually slide into the topic because I'm seeing that with you, we can really talk about anything and everything, which is a good thing. So
Yes.
I like what you said that we cannot undo the experiences. It's very interesting because in life, when something happens and afterwards, your mind keeps trying to rethink and rethink and rethink. Oh, if I had done this, if I had done this, if I had done this, but you're right. It is usually not possible to undo. And when it comes to anger, when does anger start to manifest? Because sometimes even with children, you're able to see that some tantrums, like for example, well, let's talk a little bit about tantrums. They're called the terrible twos, right? Some children just throw themselves on the floor and just create a nightmare for their parents. Others seem to be so cool, calm, and collected. Tell us a little bit, how far back does anger start and what causes it?
Anger, and first, I'm so happy that you bring up the issue of children, because we think children should not have emotions like we do. But they do have emotions and feelings. The difference is that they don't have the emotional capacity to maybe explain to us, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what I'm thinking, simply because their brains have not developed yet, simply because they don't have the vocabulary. So what they do have is they have their little bodies and they can communicate with that. And hence we throw ourselves on the floor and we scream and we throw a tantrum,
So
right?
that's a way
So
of
that
communicating, basically.
they are trying to tell us something when they do that. But you see, the thing with anger, it's often called or referred to in the psychological world as a secondary emotion. And I like to think of anger as an emotion of cowardice. Because, and I'll explain to you why, Anne. Because anger is really a mask for something else. Anger is a mask that we put on when we are trying to hide something from ourselves, not even other people. We're trying to hide something from ourselves. And it often comes down to three things. It comes down to fear, our own fear, maybe of rejection, our own fear of not being successful or attaining something. It comes down to pride. You know, we have a lot of pride, and pride comes from a point of ego. And we have pain. When we're in a state of pain, we are often very vulnerable. And we see this especially with women. When we're in pain and we feel vulnerable, we will do one of two things. We will either attack. So this is when we see we have an anger outburst, or we will retract. So as women, we are pros at that. We are pros at not expressing our anger at the time when we are angry. So one morning, your spouse would just say, "Good morning," and you explode. And you bring up the socks that you had to pick up 2 weeks ago from the floor. You bring up that he didn't pack the dishwasher or unpack the dishwasher in this COVID time. And it is just a massive situation that we've created because we have bottled it all up inside.
And that's very interesting, Charlene, because I thought that women process very well, but you're actually saying the opposite, that we tend to hold it, then we have an outburst, which honestly is very, very real and very common. You know, something small happens, but the reaction of the person is this big. So yes. I definitely agree with what you're saying. It's a secondary.
We overreact.
We overreact, yes.
Yes, we overreact. As women, we tend to overreact. And our perception is that our men underreact. How many times when we get together with our girlfriends, "Oh, he is not telling me how he's feeling. He is not spending time with me. You know, there's a disconnect." Yes. Our men are underreacting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No feelings, and you know.
Yes, exactly. And this is the nature of anger. You know, if we do not manage our anger, Anne, it is going to manage us.
Correct. That's what happens. And to be honest, that's like I spoke to somebody recently, and what happens is now the anger manages you so much and you don't like what you see. Now you yourself. Remember you mentioned that it is a secondary emotion, which means you're trying to hide something for yourself, but now it has manifested in a way that you're not pleased with what you're not pleased that you've hit somebody. You're not pleased that you've banged a door, broken utensils, and that's the point where people start to deal. A little late, maybe they should have started a little early, but well.
Yes, definitely, you know, and anger comes in different, how can I say, different grades. You know, you get the anger. Anger is an emotion and we have to embrace it and we have to feel it. It is okay. It is okay if today something happens in my life and I get angry at the situation, but I see it for what it is. I feel it for what it is, but then I let it go. I don't hang on to that experience. I don't allow it to grow and fester, because you see, the saying that we have, misery likes company. Well, anger also loves company. Anger loves the company of envy, pride, blame. These are the things, all these negative, nasty things, these are the things that attracts anger. And so we get different grades. We get the anger that comes and goes and it is normal. We get the anger that we internalize, we keep bottling it up, we don't process it. That leads to these outbursts, and they can, you know, anger is a strong emotion because of its affiliation or connotation to violence. Yes. You know, I can pick up this glass and I can throw it. You know, it is not just the violence of the tongue. There's a physical violence that can come with this emotion.
Yes.
Then the third level of anger, and you've mentioned it earlier, Anne, and I'm so happy that you've mentioned it, it is rage. Now, rage, when rage steps in, it is a blinding anger. And when we deal with rage, oftentimes we trace the root cause of that rage back to an unprocessed trauma experience. Maybe even from your childhood, maybe even something that you are not aware of. So yes, and the third level of rage, of anger, is when we get that blinding anger that completely takes control over us, and it's called rage. You've mentioned it earlier, and rage
Yes.
is very real, and it's a very profound response. And often we find that rage has its root cause in unprocessed trauma. And this trauma can be childhood trauma that you are not even aware of as an adult. The only thing that you are aware of is this symptom. Rage is a symptom of unprocessed trauma.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense, Charlene, because when it comes to things like abuse, these are basically the consequences or the tangible manifestations of rage. You slap, you shove, you throw things, and not only between spouses, it can even be to your colleagues, maybe your juniors, or it can even be to your children. Sometimes you have a lot of unprocessed issues and you can't deal with them with the person maybe at work. So there's transference of some sort, and you find yourself maybe hitting your children. And those are things that people do relate to because they see them happening all the time.
Exactly, Anne, and you've hit the nail on the head. If we don't process our anger or our rage, we are going to transfer it. If you are angry, you are making others around you angry. If you are irritated, you are going to make others around you irritated. If you are annoyed, you are going to make others around you annoyed. And this is very, very important, because when we come to how do we deal with this gremlin called anger, it all comes down to a choice that you have to make. And only you can make it. You see, the thing is, we grow up and we believe that we can change others. We want to change the anger in others. But the thing is, and the reality is, you can't. You can only control and manage and process your own anger. And this thing of wanting others to behave the way you want them to behave or act in a way you want them to act is when we analyze anger, this is where it comes from. We are projecting our own desires and expectations onto others. And when they do not perform the way we want to perform, we want them to perform, we become angry. We become angry at our spouses because they have not followed our advice. They have not done what we have told them to do. We become angry at our children because they are not choosing the subjects that we want for them at school. They are not dating the people we want them to date.
Yes.
But really, Anne, is it our choices to make? Is it our expectations to expect? And this is the thing with anger. If we want to deal with our anger, we have to start looking at ourselves. You know, it is easy to look at others. It's easy to point out, oh, you are not doing this, you should be doing that, you should study this, you should date this demographic.
Yes.
But when it comes to ourselves, can we apply those yardsticks to ourselves? Can we be courageous to start looking inside? then it becomes a different story altogether.
Yes. Because somehow on ourselves, we're able to justify things. You know, it could even be
Oh,
the same.
yes.
Maybe you are not performing very well in school in a certain subject, but now your child is just like you, not performing. But here you are, you're all enraged because you're like, my child needs to know math, needs to know science. They cannot be choosing music or art or whatever, you know? And really, if you can just be retrospective a little, you might find that you had the same struggles when you were that age. But you're right. You don't want to, the person who is angry does not want to look within. They're more concerned about looking outside.
Yes. I
But
often tell, sorry, Anne?
is it possible? When I listen to you, you make it sound so simple. Like, it's just a choice. You just need to make a choice to not be angry. And that sounds nice and easy. But what is the practicality of it? Like, if you've been reacting in an angry manner for, let's say, up to your 20s or 30s, how much time are you going to take to be able to deal with it and deal with anger the right way? Is it going to take you a month, a year, another 20 years? What is the reality of solving this issue in terms of healing, the healing journey, the journey towards healing?
And it begins, I know I make it sound easy to say it comes down to a choice, but it really is just that simple. When you reach a stage where you are fed up with your own anger outbursts, when you are able to have insight and look at the chaos that you cause by your anger outbursts, and you come and you say, listen, self, this is not how I want to be. This is not how I want to behave. Then it is possible to now take charge of your anger. When we live an angry life, we are highly charged. And when it comes down to the choice, you make the choice to become highly in charge of your own thoughts, of your own behaviors, of your own actions. So instead of being highly charged because of anger, become highly in charge. If you do not deal with your anger is going to deal with you. And it is very, very important to understand this because we see this in our children. An angry mother, you will often find an angry child. A sad mother, you will often find a sad child. But the opposite is also true, and this is where the power of choice comes in. A happy mother, you will find a happy child. A peaceful mother, you will find a peaceful child. That anger which we do not transform, we will transfer. So what is our choices? What can we replace anger with? Right? What do we choose? What do we choose to replace anger with? What is the complete opposite of anger?
Calmness, peace,
Yes.
harmony.
Harmony, love, and
Love.
the opposite of all these negative things is always love. And if we have time on the show, I'll show you a little bit about how we use this emotion of love. And for me, love is God. And I know God is a sensitive subject for some because God is this big man in the sky that sits with a big stick and is out there to punish us. And yes. I don't know what, and I don't know what. But to some of us, God is love.
God is love.
God is love. It's unconditional love. Yes. And to love someone and to deal with any situation from a point of love does not mean that you have to distance yourself or disconnect yourself. You can still be there to support those people who you want them to follow your ideals and your notions of what is best for them.
Yes.
without being in the actual decision.
Okay.
If you can be there to support in a loving way, you know. For example, our husbands come home and would start telling us about a situation at work. I'm so stressed because the accountant didn't get the spreadsheets in on time, and my budgets are late, whatever the situation may be. But we are there as the spouses, ever ready with the advice. But I've told you that accountant needs to go. I've told you that accountant, the way I'm seeing him, he has got some side hustles. Now, what happens in that situation? The husband is going to stop talking to you about what is happening at the office. Yes. Because you are ever ready to feel his emotions that he is supposed to feel. You are ready to respond to his responses that he is supposed to share with you. You are making him emotionally lazy, if I can call it that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Because you're not giving him the chance to name the emotions and to go through them. You're cutting short the process by giving solutions, basically.
Yes. So when we find ourselves in conflict situations, the very first things that we look at is, how are you reacting? Are you overreacting? Are you letting the other person say what they need to say, whether you agree with it or not? But it is their story to tell. It is their emotion to share. So in a loving way, we can listen, because that is what they need. We can listen and we can offer loving, supporting advice. Oh, I'm so sorry that the accountant did not prepare the documents in time. Don't worry, I'm sure tomorrow when you get to the office, it will be ready.
Yeah.
So I've been supportive. I've avoided a conflict, and my husband is going to feel like, oh, I can approach Anne with my stories of the day, you know. She is not going to jump out and be my advisor and be the little Miss Know-it-all, a nosy Parker, you know. We are so good at being a nosy Parker in other people's business.
Yes, that's
instead
true.
of being a nosy Parker in our own business.
That's very true. And I like the way you're approaching it, because that's what we tend to do. We tend to not let, it's like the other person's emotions infuriate us, and then we just want to shut them down rather than support them. And you see, the way you've responded by saying, oh, I'm so sorry, maybe let's try tomorrow, gives it's like a fire that has sort of been, is slowly being reduced, and then it will die off, and the result will be calmness. And that's what I remember what you said earlier, that anger charges you, but what you should try to aim for is to be in charge, of your feelings, to be in charge of how you're responding. And I agree, because the times that I have felt angry, I know that there's usually a split second of a decision where sometimes you can either go along with the anger, or you can just say no, or distract yourself something, and then the situation changes. So I do agree that there's always like a split moment there when where it's like you're given a chance to choose, how is this going to go? And the thing is, to be able to be aware of that. I think that's what I'm hearing, to be able to be aware of that, and then to be able to choose love, to choose support, instead of choosing it's like the rage, letting it carry you into something which is usually not, which is usually ugly, you know?
It is, and you know, anger is very competitive. If you and I were to get involved in a real angry tiff, you know, I am going to try and outsmart the next insult you are going to hurl at me, you know? If men are fighting, I'm going to try to deliver that knockout punch, that physical blow,
Yes.
you know, that is really going to send you moving around the floor like we see in the movies, you know. So this
Knock
is
you out.
knock you out. Yes, you know, I am the toughest, and this is the game with anger. It is always going to try and outdo the other participants, right? And so if we become aware, because we can all get angry, but we cannot all take control of that emotion and take command it. We can use that emotion of anger for good or for bad. And it really comes down to a choice. And you said, but it is so hard, you know? Yes, it is hard because we are lazy, and we are inherently lazy to try and practice a different way. It's easy for me to say, that product is, if I want to attack a competing product, you know, it's
Yes.
easy for us, and we see this in sales and marketing teams everywhere in the world. It's easy to say something negative about a competing product. It's not so easy to say something flattering or even pay it a compliment. And this is the same about with anger. It is something that you have to practice. If you go to the gym today, because we've all put on an extra few grams here and there in the COVID pandemic, you know.
No,
just
you
a
have.
few grams. You see, not so much, just a few grams, but we want to go to the gym, and a few gyms have opened, or we have access to our exercise apps that we can do at home.
Yes.
So we decide today, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to get rid of these extra few grams, and the program says I have to do 5 sit-ups. So I do 5 sit-ups, and I feel, well, this was nothing. I am so good, I can do 10 sit-ups. So on day 1, we do 10 sit-ups. The program says do 10 arm curls or whatever. I do 10, but I don't feel tired. I do 20. Now the problem is tomorrow, when I have to do my exercise program again, I'm in so much pain that I never want to even open that app. I am going to wait until Wednesday or Thursday, but that pain doesn't go, and then I stop exercising. And the same is with anger. It is something that you have to practice, and you're not going to get it right in day 1. And be kind with yourself. When you do get angry, forgive yourself. And tell yourself, you know what? Tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow I will do better. I'm going to be aware, and I'm going to make a different choice in how I deal with this anger. And the same with our children. That 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old that is throwing a tantrum. I want to talk about that because it's so important. We as parents don't understand that. When children get angry and they throw a tantrum, something that all parents, myself included, say to them is, stop it. Stop it. You don't want to hear, you just want to stop it. And this is where we go wrong. When children are upset, it is they want to be acknowledged.
Okay.
You as a parent have to come down to their level, even physically come down to their level. Don't stand up, come physically down to their level and say, Sammy, I know you're upset. It is okay to be upset. Tell me why you are upset. Let them speak. They may not be able to tell you, I'm upset because of this or this. Don't even ask them to explain to you why, because they can't. For them, it is enough to see that mommy or daddy is listening to me. They have heard me. And then the teaching for the children is it is okay to be upset. It is not okay to behave badly on those feelings. It is not okay to throw our toys at the TV. It is not okay to beat our brother or our sister. It is not okay to say bad things to our nanny or our house helper, because that is not okay. So we have to lovingly again give them boundaries on their behavior, but very important to let them feel acknowledged, let them feel that they've been heard. Even us as adults, sometimes we just want somebody to listen. We just want our partner to say, okay, I hear you are very upset. How can we solve this problem? How can I support you in this problem?
Okay,
If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, and I totally agree with you, because I'm a mom. I have two boys, and that's what I find myself doing all the time. When there's an outburst, I want to suppress it. I want to suppress it quickly instead of letting it just go through the normal. Because the good thing about feelings, I always say the good thing about feelings is they come and go. They don't last forever. So the anger, the tantrum, it will come, but it will go. You don't have to cut it short. You can just let the child experience the acknowledgement that you've talked about, know that they have been heard, they have been listened to, and then that is a teaching point for me as the mom, to tell them,
yes.
Now if you feel like that, you don't have to hit, you don't have to throw, you can just wait a little, that feeling will go, or just take your time, the feeling will end and you'll be back to normal. So I like that approach, and I'm so happy that you're giving us tips that are so relevant even with our children, because it happens a lot, and these things, if they're not dealt with early, that's when you find people have closed up, because every time I come to you, you react in an angry way for whatever reason, and then the people around you start to withdraw, and shortly there is no flow. There is like a gap, and that gap now becomes another big issue that people sometimes do not know how to maneuver. So what can you do if you find yourself in such a situation, either with your child, with your colleagues, or with your spouse? How do you go back and try and retrieve or get what has been lost because of anger?
And the thing about anger is that anger follows patterns. Anger follows patterns. And when we start and look at these patterns in our lives, we will know there's a family member that I always have a conflict with. There is a certain topic with my child that always brings anger. So we can actually sit back and identify the patterns. Is it a pattern with myself and one other person? Is it a triangular pattern where I involve others to take my side, or so on and so forth? So we need to identify the pattern, and we need to break the pattern. Now, in breaking the pattern, the key element in breaking patterns of anger is to understand that we cannot change the other person.
Okay.
If you want to change a pattern of anger, you can only start with yourself. I can only keep my side of the road clean. Yeah. So we start looking at the anger conflict, and we start looking at our own participation in it. What is the conversation like? What am I doing that is fueling the other person's anger? Because we are angry, we are pitting the two levels of anger against each other, or the three levels of anger. I'm either overreactor in the situation. I'm either one that is giving the advice. Am I the one that has expectations of the others perform this anger? And what can I do to change it? Right? And three simple things to remember. In a conflict situation where there is anger, stay calm. It is not easy to do, but if you are aware of it, it is possible. Stay calm. Rather underreact than overreact.
Yes.
Stay calm.
Okay.
The second point when we deal with triangular conflict is to stay out of the conflict.
Okay.
Do not give advice. Do not give an opinion. Do not try to fix it. Do not try to give a lecture about it, especially as women, especially as mothers. You know, it is not, some of these things are not our decisions to make. It is not, especially when we are mothers of young adults. You know, I would never choose this partner for my son, especially with the sons. And with the daughters, we want our own ideal of a dream husband. I can tell you now, and in my own experience, my husband is definitely not my mother's idea of a dream husband.
But you had to accept your decision.
But that in itself was not easy.
Yes.
How can it is not even different religion, it is now even a different race, coming from South Africa, you know? How does that work?
It is so counter-cultural, so counter everything.
Yes, so definitely my choice of husband is not that of my mother's dream wishes for her daughter, I can assure you.
Yes.
But this is what we do, but we make it our conflict. And so we get angry about it, we get annoyed. But really, we don't have to.
Yeah.
The third thing is to hang in, because these conflicts will resolve itself if you choose a different path. If you choose, okay, I am going to choose the path of love.
Yes.
And joy and calmness. I am going to be brave enough to look at my own actions. I'm going to be brave enough to look at what I am projecting onto these situations.
Yeah.
With my work colleagues, with my children. And I am going to be brave enough to change something. Because the moment you start changing something about yourself, the others will respond and the pattern will break.
Yes.
When you stop doing the emotional heavy lifting for other people or the other parties involved in the conflict, they will start doing it themselves. Our children need to learn and feel the feeling of anger. If we tell them to suppress it, we are not teaching them to feel it and to process it.
Yes, we are creating a problem. Actually, it's becoming a vicious cycle, because what you talked about is that it is a secondary reaction. So you find that you're just going around in circles and you're making it worse with every generation, you know?
You're making it worse. And family conflict is rife because of that, because we are not teaching our other players in the family to feel their own feelings and go through their own learning processes. But it doesn't mean that we cannot and should not be there to support. I'm not talking about situations where it is always about giving money, for example. You know, in our family, there's always those who feel they are ATMs. They must always just give money or be ready with the M-Pesa.
Right. Black tax.
Yeah. I'm not talking about that support. I'm talking about emotional support, you know? That support that comes from love, the opposite of anger. That positive encouragement. It is going to be okay. You are doing your best tomorrow will be another day. I am here for you. I can listen to your problem. I can help you think through solutions.
Yes.
And I think in the more affluent families, not only in Kenya but around the world, this issue of money is always the solution.
It's so sad, by the way.
It's actually the problem.
It's a problem.
Remember, as children, we want acknowledgement. We want to feel my parent is there. And then we grow up with only ever being given money,
and
not
give
time.
Yes.
And that creates a whole set of problems in our adult life.
Yes. You know, I'm listening to you, and what you're saying is making so much sense. And I can hear the point that I am also really connecting with is you can choose to stay out of the conflict. And I wonder, does that have to do with a bit of control? You can cede control of others, because I feel like when you're angry, you're trying to control the person. You want them to react this way instead of the other way. For example, you want your child to talk to you politely, but maybe they're being rude. But you have to accept that you cannot change them. Like your example, for example, your mom has no control over who you're going to marry. So she just has to completely cede control. And that is what I find most people have a challenge with, because they want to control. They want to control. Like, I want to live my life, but I also want to live a bit of my life through Charlene and through Charlene's child and husband. you know? And
of course.
Yeah, it becomes crazy.
And that is a different way, or what I found in my life, that issue of wanting to control others.
Yes.
It is a life of ego. Yeah. And it's a life of ego. It is a life where we are controlled by our own selfish needs and wants. Mm-hmm. It is the life of ego is opposite again of the life of God. Yes. If you can see that, or if I can replace, if some of our viewers find the word God again, the big man in the sky with a scepter, and I don't know what, replace it with faith. Let's replace it with the word faith, Really, what are we in control of? Are we really so much in control of what we perceive we are in control of?
No.
Faith and trust. You see, these are all the opposite emotions and feelings that comes down to a choice. I can choose to be angry, or I can choose to be happy. I can choose to live a life of faith and hope and love and peace, or I can choose a life of anger, hurt, illness, sadness, conflict. It is all in our power to choose. Be highly charged or be highly in charge.
And guess what? Time is up. But even as we wrap up, how can people reach you, Charlene? Because what you're saying is so practical. It is so real. And you mentioned earlier in your introduction that because you've gone through these journeys by yourself, you're living a life where you're helping others to go through these journeys for themselves. And I just wonder, you talked about an institute, Albani Institute.
Albane Institute.
Albane Institute. So
yes.
Tell us a little bit give us your contacts. How can people reach you if they want to connect with you more?
Yes, and please, people can feel free to look at our Facebook page, Albane Institute. They can follow us on LinkedIn. They can reach us there. They can book sessions. We are releasing classes, online classes for people to join in the class and to learn more about a lot of things. But for sure, reach out to us on our social media handles. So we ran out of time.
We ran out of time. Earlier in the show, you talked about something that struck me very much. You talked about coping versus healing. And I just thought, oh my
Yes,
God, in life, we're taught to cope. We're taught to cope. Like this situation has come, you just cope, you just cope, you just, deal with it. But your approach is different. It is coping is not it, it is healing, dealing
yes,
with the issues. So for
healing,
sure,
yes.
I
And this
think,
is what is different. This is what is different at Albane. You know, we have a cause and we have an effect. A lot of people deal with a cause. Oh, I'm angry because of A, B, C, and D. The person did this and this and this. But
yes.
that is not going to help. At Albane, we look at the effects. How is it affecting you today? How is it affecting your body? How is it affecting your thinking, your behavior, your choices? And that is where we start the road to healing and not the road to coping.
I
And
like
that
that
is
so
the
much.
difference.
I like your approach because there's a lot of people who approach these situations with trying to understand the why. But you know what? Even if you understand the why, it will not cause you to heal. Maybe it will help a little, but you're right. What really matters is looking at the effects of these things in your life and deciding what kind of life you want and starting your road towards that place. A lot of times with psychology, it's about why, your childhood, your mother, your father. And honestly, that also just makes you a bit perplexed sometimes. And it makes you lose control because you can't go back to your childhood. So I like what you're doing at Albane. And Charlene, it's been such a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Anne. You
And
made me feel so
please,
welcome on your show.
okay. Thank you so much. I think we're going to wrap it up. And I know that this has been beneficial to our viewers. So we'll definitely reach out to you once more to be able to give us a session two where we can look at the effects of anger and how to get out of those effects. Thank you so much, Charlene. And we look
Thank you,
forward
Anne.
to seeing you next time. Thank you, our
Yes,
viewer. And keep it here. We shall be able to have this up on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel so that you can be able to keep referring to it. Thank you so much and have a lovely day. Bye.